Hi everyone. Today's lesson has us writing linear functions. This should sound pretty familiar because writing linear functions is the same as writing linear equations, which we've worked on plenty this year. The difference here is you're going to be having situations. You're going to be able to relate it to some information versus just being given a graph, a table, an ordered set of ordered pairs and being told to write a linear equation. It may actually be easier. So, the two things we need to write a linear function are slope and y-intercept. All right, all of our equations will be written in slope-intercept form, so we'll be using our y equals mx plus b formula or equation. What I want you to remember is that your slope is represented by the variable m, and your y-intercept is represented by the variable b. There's three different ways in this assignment that you are going to see these. One way is from a word problem. Here's our first word problem. Suppose you receive $100 for a graduation present and you deposit it in a savings account. Then each week thereafter, you add $25 to the account, but no interest is earned. The amount in the account is a function of the number of weeks that have passed. So, I'm asking you to write a linear function in slope-intercept form based on this information. So obviously we need to determine what information is the slope, what information is the y-intercept. So what I'm going to have you ask yourself, how much did you deposit initially? And I want you to focus on this keyword initially because another word for y-intercept is the initial value. So how much did you deposit initially? Well, you received $100 as your graduation present and you deposit it. So that's how much you deposit initially. Next, you're going to be asking yourself a question about some kind of a rate. At what rate did you deposit money in the account? Or how much did you deposit weekly? It says you add $25 to the account each week. So that's our rate. So now we simply write our equation in slope-intercept form. So now we're going to write an equation to represent the situation. Y equals 100 plus 25x. You might be asking why I didn't write it as y equals 25x plus 100, which would be the same exact thing. That would be acceptable as well. But going and based off what the word problem says, I'm saying I started with $100 and I added to it $25 weekly. My x variable represents the number of weeks. My y variable will represent the total amount in my savings account. So perhaps you were asked how much money would be in your savings account at the end of 4 weeks. You could simply replace x with 4 because your x variable represents the number of weeks. And 25 times 4 would be 100. 100 plus 100 is 200. So y equals 200. So your total amount in your savings account would be $200. Next, we are going to find this same information or be able to write a linear function rule from a graph. So to rent a bike, Max pays a flat rate plus an hourly rental fee. The graph shows the amount, C dollars, he pays based on the number of hours, T, he uses the bike. As you can see in this one, we are not using Y and X. But I can see that my y-intercept is represented with C. My x-intercept is represented by the variable t. So instead of y equals mx plus b, we're going to have c equals mt plus b in a sense. So again, ask yourself those questions. We need to determine what our slope and y-intercept would be. So first I'm going to ask you to determine what is the hourly rental fee. And if you remember from class earlier this year, many times when I talked about the word hourly, that is going to be the rate, how much he pays per hour. So you'd have to look at the graph to determine that. We could use rise over run. But I think in this case, it's always safest to still pull off two ordered pairs from here. So I'm going to pull off two ordered pairs, 0, 5, and 6, 20. They're the only two where I can fully determine that they go right through the grid marks. There's some others that look like it, but maybe they're a little bit above. So I chose my X value 0, my Y value 5, so 0, 5, and I happen to choose 620. Substitute it into our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 formula. Here's x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I get 5 over 2. But because this is referring to money in this particular situation, it would make sense to change my improper fraction to a decimal. And because it's money, I have to go out to the hundreds place. So this man is paying $2.50 each hour to rent his bike. So now that we know what our slope would be, we need to determine our y-intercept. We've talked much this year about y-intercepts being just some fee you have to pay for something. And you can see here too that our y-intercept would be when our x value is 0. So before he's even rented this bike or rode it, I guess not rented it, rode it at all, hasn't even been an hour, he's paid a fee. So he's paid $5. Take that right off the graph. So now just take your information and we are going to write an equation. Write an equation to represent the situation. Don't forget, in this case, we are not using y and x. Notice that my y-axis is represented by the variable c and my x-axis is represented by the variable t. So I will replace y with c and x with t. So in this case, I get c equals 2.50 t plus 5. So I could use this to determine how much money I'd have to pay to rent this bike. Max is paying $2.50 each hour. So T represents the number of hours he's out riding the bike or using the bike, plus the $5 fee. Lastly, you might be asked to write any linear function from a table. And here's what we have here. Howard baked muffins. The table below displays the temperature inside the oven since he turned the oven off. So my top will be my X values. The bottom is my Y values. Time since turning the oven off, it's been 0 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and here's the temperature of the oven. It started at 375. After 5 minutes, it was only 325 degrees. After 10 minutes, it's down to 275, and after 15 minutes, it's down to 225. You're being asked to write a linear function rule based on this information. So, what was the temperature of the oven when he turned it off? So, 0 minutes since he turned it off. Right when he turned it off, what was the temperature of the oven? 375. Now, very often from tables, one of your X values is 0. That's your y-intercept. That's your initial value. Just like a graph. We just used this question. Got to go all the way back. We know that my X value is 0. My Y value is 5. That would be the ordered pair, 0, 5. That's the same information in a table. It's just not shown to you on a graph. Here's my X value. When my X value is 0, the corresponding Y value is my y-intercept. So what was the temperature of the oven when he turned it off? It was 375 degrees Fahrenheit. What rate is the temperature decreasing by? You might be able to do this as we've learned from a table. Your Y values first, because that's like your rise. What's happening constantly here? It's decreasing by 50 degrees. So negative 50, because 375 minus 325 is 50. 325 minus 275 is 50. 275 minus 225 is 50. I can see it's going down 50 degrees, so it's negative 50. And then my X values are increasing by 5. I may also choose just to grab 2 ordered pairs, just to be sure, and use my formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Cannot go wrong by doing that. So I chose one ordered pair, 0, 375, and another one, 5, 325. Substituted it in. Remember, x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 is negative 50. X2 minus x1, 5 minus 0 is 5. So what's happening here? Why is the rate negative? Because the temperature is going down. Now we just have to take this information and write an equation to represent the situation. Very often when you have a decreasing rate, you're going to write that second. We're going to start with our y-intercept because that's where the temperature starts, and it's decreasing 10 degrees. This is per minute. I know our table is showing me in 5-minute increments, but our x value represents the number of minutes. So every 5 minutes is decreasing 50 degrees. Therefore, it's really decreasing 10 degrees every minute. So our function rule is y equals 375 minus 10x. Good luck on your assignment that is related to this. Feel free to email me, message me at any point in time. If you need me to set up a Google Meet to help you even more, I can. Good luck. Don't forget to be making up those assignments you owe as well.